Welcome to this episode of the Mindset Flex podcast. This is your host, Elise, and today we're talking about anxiety and getting rid of anxiety or rewiring your brain to stop anxious thoughts. And if you're anything like me or any other human being, you're probably like, hand raised, sign me up. Yes, because I hate anxious thoughts and I want to get rid of them. So let's dive right in and let's talk about what is anxiety. Anxiety comes from your thoughts. It's not a chemical imbalance that causes anxiety. It's your thoughts. We're human beings who can create different visions and thoughts about the future. We can create a positive or a negative outlook. We can imagine the good and we can imagine the bad. So anxiety stems from creating negative falsehoods about the future, which is actually a really good thing because we can change our thoughts. It's 100% possible, but you need to realize that your brain is like a muscle. And the more you work at it, obviously, the stronger it gets. But you need to realize that this is going to be a process. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take work, okay? This is going to take work. And the more you work on this, the easier it will be. So all the tools that I give you today and everything that we talk about, once you leave this podcast, this is going to be your job to practice this day in, day out and not expecting it to just happen right away. So if you stick to these things and you practice it every time anxious thoughts come up, you will eventually be able to rewire your brain so that anxious thoughts are not the things that come immediately into your mind. There's a study that recently came out that showed that 85% of the things that we worry about don't actually happen. 85% of the things that we are anxious about or worry about don't actually happen. How freaking wild is that? So having anxiety is living in the future, in a created future that our mind made up based on some triggers or things that have happened to us in the future, or maybe just some things that we are imagining, but they're not real. And again, most of the time, 85% of the time, they actually never happen. So I want to give you guys an actual example of a primal fear because primal fears are real. And then the little sissy fears that we have, the little scaries, like, oh my gosh, if I make this post, what is my mom going to think? Or what is Nancy in accounting going to think about me? Oh my goodness. And then it paralyzes us. And they're just little scaries because they're not real. And we're holding ourselves back by having these false anxieties about something that might not even happen, or it doesn't even matter. But primal fear is real. And like I mentioned before with my whole backflip situation, my nervous system would shut down anytime I would go into a backflip because I had trauma, right? Like when I set my backflip on skis, I compress my spine and my body is like signaling me every time I try to go into a backflip, oh no, major anxiety coming up, heart rate is coming up, body shutting down, you're not doing this. And I become anxious. It's a real thing. So today we're going to attack both things like primal fears, when primal fears are causing us anxiety and causing our bodies to actually shut down, but also talk about the little sissies, the little scaries, and the anxiety living that we experience that really is not serving us good and also is not needed at all because we're just projecting a false future. So let's talk about what helps. The number one thing that I recommend to people, and I truly believe helps so much, is meditation. And I know a lot of people are kind of against meditation, or they think, oh my gosh, like I just can't do it. You know, it's just too hard. And oh, you're not going to like this. But if you're saying you're not doing meditation because it's too hard, that means you're weak-minded. That means you can't control your brain because the whole point of meditation is that it shows you how uncontrollable your mind actually is. And I'm telling you, the first 15 to 20 minutes of meditation is just you trying to fight your brain, or at least for me, trying to fight my brain and let things go. Like I'm just constantly, all right, let it go, let it go. Okay, this comes up. Okay, well, it came up. Let it go. That's all right. No, you don't need to get up right now. And if I get up, guess who won? My brain just won. So it's so important to practice that strength, that discipline, that willpower against our minds, because our minds are super uncontrollable, especially if we never practice being mindful. So eventually, if you keep letting things go and just in a calm way fighting your brain and just saying, no, you're just going to sit here and you're just going to meditate. Eventually, your mind will actually calm down. So number one is meditation and just practicing being in control of your mind and not letting your mind take over with constant storms of thoughts. Now, the second thing is, and this is the thing that makes such a gigantic difference for me. So let's take the example of you maybe having to get on your stories on Instagram, show your face, and tell a story that is sort of embarrassing, but you know that if you tell this story, it's going to change lives and it's going to add value. But now you're second guessing yourself and having anxiety because you're like, what is my mom going to think? What is my friend going to think? What is Steven in accounting going to think? And all these thoughts are coming in and you're just getting overwhelmed. Your heart rate is going up. So there's a question that you can ask yourself, and that is, what is the problem right now? At this moment, in this moment, like maybe you're driving in your car and your thoughts are taking over about something that may happen next week or later that day, or something that maybe is like so far in the future, but you just cannot let it go. And you need to ask yourself, what is the problem right now? Like you need to show your brain how ridiculous your fear is. This little scary, like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in my car thinking about what my mom might think about my story or what Steven in accounting might think. That is ridiculous. And so are you ruining your current present moment because you're projecting a false future that probably won't even happen? And so whatever you're doing when these anxious thoughts come in, that is honestly the first thing you need to do is ask yourself that question, like disrupt your mind. Do not let your mind take over and keep going with these thoughts. Disrupt it and say, hold on, pause. Maybe tell your brain, time out. Just say, all right, let's just put a pin in that and let's do a timeout. Okay, and let's clear the slate. And let me look around me. Okay, I see some other cars driving by. Maybe I see some trees. What is the problem right now in this moment? Oh, nothing. Right now, I'm just driving in my car and the trees are passing and the cars are passing. Right now, there's no problem. And so this is so dang important to realize that you are literally living in a projected future when you are living in anxiety. Like you're actually ruining your present moment where you could be experiencing all the beauty around you. There's so much beauty around you. And trust me, I'm coming from a place where I have had to practice this out the ass this year. I've had a lot of hardships happen to me, as you know, I mentioned before too, a lot of issues with my marriage that obviously has put a lot of strain on my mental health. And something that me and my husband have both been actually practicing is this, like no matter what happens or anxiety might come in or we get into arguments or we think about our like where we're at, we both actually just have been practicing sitting down and just being like, what is the problem right now? Right now at this moment, actually nothing. Let's go outside, go on a walk and just enjoy the environment that we're in. Like, let's just freaking look at the trees. And I know I keep bringing up the trees. I mean, honestly, like I live in the mountains, so all I see is trees, like literally all the time. And I've practiced just being thankful for the trees. Like, I know this sounds really weird, but with how much anxiety started knocking on my door this year, I had to fight back real hard with my brain. And so something that I practiced and got my mind used to is noticing the trees. Like whenever these anxious thoughts would come in, because I drive to the gym, then I drive home, like everything is like really close here, right? But you kind of got to like drive everywhere. And because I go to so many places, I feel like I'm like constantly kind of driving. And so driving time is the time that I have to sometimes think. And if I'm not listening to podcasts or something inspirational, I can get in my thoughts. And so immediately I need to be like, oh, notice the trees, notice the trees. And so that's been my cue for me. And maybe you can find a cue for you. What are things around you that can kind of bring you back to the present moment, that can make you remember, oh, well, I'm right here, right now, at this moment, in this moment, I'm okay, I'm safe. You know, like ask yourself that. what is the problem right now? I like wrote that on a little piece of paper and put that on my mirror in the bathroom to remind myself that every time I go into the bathroom or look in the mirror, I ask myself, what is the problem right now? Oh, right now, there's no problems. Right now, in this moment that already actually passed, but this moment, there are no problems. Like, Elise, look outside, look at the trees. And so I just started noticing the different pine trees. I mean, we're just surrounded by so many pine trees, but I literally learned to love and appreciate trees this year. And you guys are like, oh my gosh, is she on a wild trip right now? Like, what is happening? No, I just had to rewire my brain to think about the beauty right now in this moment instead of thinking of a projected future that does not exist. So for me this year, it was the trees. I would constantly bring myself back to reality, to this moment, to the now by the trees. And it would work. It seriously started to work. And so even now, whenever anxious thoughts come, I'm like, Elise, look at the trees. And that was just my cue to remind myself to come back to the moment, to realize I'm here right now. I'm not anywhere else. And I don't want to freaking miss out on my life because I'm living in a projected anxious-filled future that does not even freaking exist. So like you need to realize how ridiculous our minds can get and it can take over. And we don't realize sometimes that we are in control of it. It's not our minds. Like we can choose to be in control of our thoughts. And that's why anxiety is something that can give you hope because we don't have to live in it. Like you can choose to rewire your brain from not experiencing anxiety. And if I look back at my year, from how much crap I had to go through and experience, like that, honestly, like all the hardships, like if I didn't go through all the insane hardships that honestly, if you would have told me about like 5 years ago, I would have been like, absolutely no way. I would not handle that. I would die. But all the hardships forced me to get to this place, like to get my mind to a higher level where I'm triggered a lot less, where I don't give into anxiety or live in anxiety. And in a way, if you get triggered to get anxious, it's kind of a blessing because it shows you, like it gives you an opportunity to practice getting better. So don't get frustrated with yourself or get down on yourself when you're in this journey practicing. Like, trust me, once you like learn all this truth and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually in control of my thoughts. Like I can control whether I'm anxious or not. Okay, I got to start doing this work. And then you realize how hard it is. You realize how much you do it. And it's really easy to get discouraged and to get down on yourself because the moment you start working on something, that's when you realize how much you do it. And you're like, gosh, dang it, I'm so screwed up. But I'm telling you, once you start on this journey, yes, it will be hard work. Don't expect it to be easy. It will be hard and it will be work. Therefore, it's going to take time and you need to be patient in the process. And you need to realize that these thoughts are going to come. And another thing that I do that really helps me, my gosh, this is the third thing. So actually to go back, first one was meditation. Second one was asking yourself the question, what is the problem right now? And with the second one, I think that's the most important one too, is coming back to the now. Okay, coming back to the present moment, to the now, maybe finding a cue that can bring you back. So the third thing is, instead of getting down on myself, like once I'm running this practice and these, thoughts can creep up or the triggers can creep up, I invite it. Because if I'm resisting it, like let's say I'm driving and then like an anxious thoughts comes up about the future, about something that is still not resolved in my life, but I'm a control freak, so I need to control it. I need to resolve it. I'm like, no, Lise, no, you don't. The only thing you need to do is focus on the right now, this moment. And if that thought creeps in, why don't you invite it in? Because if you are suppressing it, if you're pressing it down and you're trying to resist it and ignore it, guess what's going to happen? Shit's going to pile up. It's going to pile up and it's going to burst out in a much worse way. Like it is going to be bad and you're going to have a big meltdown. It's going to be a lot harder to get out of it. So what you do when these thoughts come up and you've been on this journey for a while is you just say, oh, hi, welcome. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome to these thoughts. Here's a chair. I'm going to pull it out for you. You just sit down and you just chill right here. And I kid you not that when you let that thought in instead of resisting it, you gain control over it. Now you are in control of it and it just kind of just chills there. just chills and it just kind of goes away. And you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Because when you try to resist it all the time and you push it down, then you're constantly fighting and you can't even be in the moment. And then it's just going to surface anyways because it's there. Like you did not make it go away. You just pressed it down. So when an anxious thought comes in, when you've been practicing these things and you're asking yourself, what's the problem right now? And, you've done some meditation, but these things still come up because they do. Like, that's just what our brains do. Like I said, it's a muscle and it's going to take time for this to fully rewire. So when it comes in, just welcome it in with peace. And I know that sounds crazy and ridiculous, but it works. And when it comes, you just like, come chill, come sit down. You're welcomed here. And then I guarantee you it's going to go away. Now, how do we deal with the second form of anxiety, which comes from a primal fear, which it makes our body feel like we're going to die, like we're at a threat. So for me, it's the backflip, right? My nervous system shuts down. So what do we do then? You need to immediately try to change your state because it's your body that freaks out. It's your nervous system that causes this block, that causes this, like it paralyzes you. And then your heart rate rises, your thoughts go crazy and you start to sweat, right? So if none of those things work out and you're dealing with a primal fear, go work out. That's one thing you can do. Go work out because you need to get your body into a different state. And then your body goes from an anxious state to I'm just working out. So that's why my heart rate is up. And it literally changes your state. Or go right to deep breathing. A study showed that 6 deep breaths can change your state because this changes your heart rate. And that's what you need to work on. So a deep breath would be like this, in your nose and out your mouth. That's one deep breath. And you do 6 of those as deep as you can, as heavy as you can, and it immediately changes your heart rate. So that is the biggest thing with primal fears, is you need to change your state. You need to go do something else. Do your breathing, go work out. For me, like I'm not going into a backflip. I mean, most likely I'm at the tramp park, so there's a bunch of trampolines. So what do? I take deep breaths. That's the first thing I do. I'm like, all right, not working, not going to do it. I need to get some different winds in and I need to move my body. So I do my deep breaths and then I try to go and do some other tricks, get myself some winds, get myself into a different state. And then I get excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did a Misty 7. Hell yeah. And then I'm totally forgotten about the backflip. And so when these things happen, you need to change your state and you need to come to the realization that you're not going to identify with a feeling. A feeling is just a passing cloud. It's not going to stay there. It's just the weather constantly changing. Okay. You're just riding the wave, but you're staying in the present moment. So you need to become extremely self-aware. You need to be aware of your thoughts, aware of what's going on in there, and respond to it. Do not just let your thoughts ride your life. Okay. You do not identify with them because you have the power to change them. And that's what I got for you for today. If you love this episode, please share it with someone you love. Mention it on your stories and mention me at ELIZFULOP. That is my Instagram. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Go and make the rest of your life the best of your life. I'll see you in the next episode.